out last night? Yeah. Nice, isn't it? We are filming for YouTube, everybody, but it is on Steve's camera, so they won't be able to hear or see anything when they watch it at home. But today for our first panel, we are going to be looking at tabletop games, and joining me on the top table tonight is... These are good intros, these. Star of the Gadget Show, influencer, designer, tech legend, and owner of a DeLorean. Please welcome Jason Bradbury! Yeah, anyway, you like, avoid all the long cables. On a mission to complete the complete history of gaming on YouTube, from Kickstarters to complete histories, please welcome Slope's Game Room! Yeah. Also, self-confessed nostalgia addicts, one of the most recognisable faces of UK retro gaming, and now a pub landlord, please welcome the Nostalgia Nerds! Writer and games journalist, author of upcoming book From Coin-Ops to Tabletop, Exponential Electronic Games, more on that later, please welcome Mike Diver! Today, reluctantly experiencing his very own face reveal, it's Chris Hill from Games You Loved! I'm going to put you over there. Right then, folks, so we've got all these beautiful machines in front of us here. Some of these tabletop games, I think you'll agree, are sort of unfairly maligned, aren't they? They're not quite as popular, or people don't make as many videos about them, people say nasty things. Tell me why it is that some of these machines aren't properly loved in the way that Chris loves them. Jump in, Dan.
I mean, as a kid growing up, when I saw these machines, I had a couple of them. They were definitely, in my mind, they were very cheap. You know, I had a few of them, but I never wanted to play with them that much because I had a Mega Drive. You know what I mean? But when you grow older and you realise the technicality of actually building something like this and having to simplify such an iconic arcade machine in a lot of cases, like PacMan and what have you, yeah, you get a lot more excitement out of them.
Is there something about these games not necessarily translating from the arcade experience? If you look at something like the Frogger, it's not quite translating from the arcade experience into the home. What do you think, Peter?
I mean, it doesn't translate at all. These are crap compared to the arcade experience. But you get one of these for Christmas, and it would be like the thing you would use for weeks, and you had nothing else. So you had to like fall in love with it. So you go to the arcade, and you could hold this up to the arcade machine. It would look nothing like it. But you go home and you convince yourself that this was the arcade experience. And even by like Afterburn, you get like a crappy little joystick. Compared back to the arcade, it's nothing. But you play.
It's a nice joystick. What are you talking about?
I mean, yeah, but the design is awesome. The design of the machine is awesome, not the game itself.
Have you felt the Bill 40 though? It feels like it's
no, but it looks good, doesn't it?
It looks good, yeah.
Well, luckily we've got a design expert here today who I believe has I'm talking about you, has a master's in design. Did I do my research correctly, Jason?
No, I don't.
Oh shit.
No.
Well, you know a lot about design though, don't you?
Well, I used to lecture in design.
I'll do me.
At the University of Lincoln, which was the university they took the piss out of in between us. So that's good. But I agree with you that from a product design perspective, I mean, look at Zaxxon. I mean, I didn't even know that they... What's that unique perspective? What's it called again?
Isometric.
Isometric. Now that's how they got Tupac to come back from the dead. Yeah. Isometric gaming is a complex thing, even when you play it on a ZX Spectrum or in the arcade. So to do it on what are they called? Vacuum fluorescent displays. Is that right? From a technical design point of view, is an absolutely astonishing feat. I'll tell you something about the Frogger, which I have to take issue with you slightly, in that it might be because I was growing up in Lincolnshire in the 80s, which was really shit. It was really, in fact, you know, Stranger Things. I literally grew up in Stranger Things. So Lincolnshire is full of big wide roads, right? And then military air bases and forests, which I used to sort of access on my BMX bike. So it's very rural. And what I'm going to say is, I feel that, well, for me, I had a Philips, was it the G7000? What's a Philips? That white clean keyboard. So I didn't have access to a really powerful gaming platform until about 83 maybe. And so something like this had a bit more meaning because of that. Do you get what I mean? When it's all you've got, I think it's a pretty close rendition of what you might have experienced at the arcade.
I mean, these are comparable to the G7000 in their abilities, to be fair.
Yeah, in their graphical splendour.
Yeah.
And it's like Peter said, if it's all you've got to use your imagination. Coming over to Chris to take a more positive slant on things now, Chris. Which game absolutely does survive the conversion from coin-op to tabletop?
Trouble is, you're talking to me, so I still believe they are the arcade. When I was a little kid, I used to play like Toby Turning Dashboard and think I was playing Outrun. You know, I mean, the brain was trying to connect the two things together. But strangely, even though I'm 50 in a few months, I'm still in that place, like weirdly, you know, like a kid playing those games, playing this game. I mean, yeah, I can go in there and get the real deal, but it's that thing of like, you know, you have to convince yourself it's that good, but really, that word.
I think we've already said shit a few times already. I think we're alright, Chris, yeah. Shit.
Talking about Tony Tabletop, so I had like a Corvette one, and the road would loop every 3 seconds. And I would sit and play that for hours. And you couldn't even crash. Like the car would just go over all the cars, everything. And I'd be like, oh God, trying to get around all these vehicles. Piece of crap. But entertainment for hours on end.
Mike. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hello.
What, as a kid, did you have tabletop-wise? What do you think of when you think of tabletop gaming?
So my one that I spent a lot of time on my old bedroom carpet annoying my dad downstairs with the noise of it was Puck Monster. So when you talk about games that translate from the arcade or whatever, you've got to remember, I mean, I was born in 80, so I wasn't going to loads of arcades in 82, 83. So to me, PacMan that I was aware of from various branding things, Puck Monster was the same, that was still PacMan, so I played the same. So absolutely loved that game to death and played it to death, literally, till the joystick just wouldn't go left anymore. So yeah, that was a big one. Afterwards, you talk about Frogger there. Frogger's one I've still got at home. Some of the other CGL ones, which are Gakken over in Japan. We had Astro Wars, which you saw trailered here, and various other names around the world. You know, a lot of them are brought over from Japan. They take on different names in this country. Obviously, a lot of you have been familiar with the Grandstand brand, which kind of relabeled a lot of them. So yeah, I mean, Puck Monster really was the big one for me, but a few others, you know, after and around the time. They were sold for years. You know, you pick up Argos catalogue in 86, 87, and still have them in there next to like the NES and the Master System and stuff. So, at which point they did feel like they were a little bit cheaper. Like, I remember my uncle getting me them, I really wanted the Sega, but like, you know, they'd get me like well, these were if you were lucky, otherwise you get those little Sistema, like handheld stuff you used to get from Index, pieces of crap, you know. I mean, these ones lined up here, the best VFD games, Zaxxon being one of them, is amazing actually, really good fun to play, and from a design point of view, like Jason was getting at. Like how they achieved it with the displays they got is actually incredible. Afterburner is a piece of shit though. Like that one is a piece of shit. It looks nice, but like that is LCD bombs. Yeah. But,
well, something that I think you do well on YouTube, Peter, is that you put our nostalgia in a sort of place and time. You know, what it really felt like to play a game or have a machine or that sort of thing. What do you think? If you think of that sort of period between 1977 and 1988, when these things were big, you know, what is it about the nostalgia of that period that A, people still remember, but B, kind of hasn't survived? You know, people don't go out and really still play these in the same way as they might buy an NDS and play that.
Yeah, I mean, these were just, it was new technology, right? It was the first time we'd had like games in such a miniature platform, and it was mind-boggling to have these in your house. And we don't have this kind of discrete product anymore. Everything is, you know, we've got PlayStations and Xboxes, but all these unique individual experiences are just gone. We don't get them. And in many ways that's good, but you lose the individuality of having each of these things. Like you might have had like an Afterburner, your mate might have had Zaxxon, and you could bring them into school on like end of term school day, and like swap them and have like these completely new experiences. We just don't have it. We've just got consoles, and you might have different games, but...
Yeah, if I may just jump, I think it's rarity, isn't it? That's what it is. I think, so being the dad of 3 teenagers, you know, the notion... We were talking about it the other day, actually. I was trying to explain to my daughter how waiting for a record that you'd heard on Top of the Pops, going into what for me was Woolworths in Horncastle, which was about 12 miles away, and it wasn't like now where we've got 87 cars per family, and you can just get wherever you want to go. I had to get the bus or cycle, and then I'd order it and wait 2 weeks for the 12-inch to come in, Kajagoogoo or whatever it was, right? And so I think that looking at the, you're a young chap to me.
I appreciate that.
A nice guy, anyway.
I was born in 1969, and so I feel that there is a sense of amazement about this technology that I want to make sure is relayed. And I'll give you an example from a technical point of view that I think is really important, and that is just the sheer kind of design solution to something like the PacMan. I don't know if we've got PacMan on here. What they did with these fluorescent formed screens is you've got all the graphics are already on screen. I'm guessing you probably know this because sometimes you can see some of the other images that you're not even playing with. They're ghosted on the screen because they're kind of, they're not fully there. And so the way that they did PacMan, if I'm correct, is each ghost has a PacMan inside it.
And
inside
inside the mouth you have the dot as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have the dot, then you have the PacMan, and then you have the ghost around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And depending on what movement you're doing and what's happening, one of those three elements lights up.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
not all three of them, I'm guessing.
No, you can get all three, technically. If the ghost is over the dot and then PacMan comes in,
Right,
it's okay.
and there's a clinch moment, yeah. So I just think it's just from that point of view, compared to, say, the way that the kind of pixel-based graphics in the arcade machine are constructed, it's a really interesting mental design job that was done.
Yeah.
And I think you're onto something there. The fact that you can look at it and see that those things are there even though they're not lit up, it's kind of it brings you into it in a little bit more of a way. It's like the sort of, you can see the mechanics of how it works. We were talking to Mike about his first experiences. I should go around and find out what either your first tabletop machine was, or maybe someone at school brought it in on Toy Day. I'll start with Chris and go along the line. Chris.
Well, if you follow games you love, you've probably seen it a fair few times. It's the Tomy turning dashboard. That's my ride, basically, and I've got about 5 of them now. I just can't stop buying them because there are variations. The German one's actually got a Porsche badge on it, so they must have done some licensing thing out there. There's quite a few different variants to it as well. But yeah, it basically, like Pete said, you just can't. I don't know. It's my one, but you just can't crash. Just like going along, round and around. But for some reason, my tiny brain just seems to enjoy that.
That's a good, it's relaxing.
I still like, yeah, exactly. So,
you can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong with it.
Dan.
So as a kid, I had Caveman. I don't know where that one came from. That was just as far back as I can remember. There was Caveman. There was Astro Wars. But I remember I bought Scramble. Like my mum would always give me, or my dad would give me like a couple of quid to go around the boot fair, and I picked up Scramble, and then I got told off because it didn't work. You stopped buying crap. But then we fixed it, so I've got like some hardcore nostalgia to that one. So like, oh wow! And then I would tell my friends, I helped make this game. Like, but it wasn't until like I was in my teens and I was going around the boot fair, and I picked up Demon Driver. Oh my god, that's so good. Demon Driver. So look up on YouTube. There's only one really decent video of it. If you look up F1 Atari, there was an Ella Mecha machine created by Namco but released by Atari, and it was incredible. So it wasn't like an arcade as in the sense of like, graphics on the screen and stuff, but you actually had a spinning disc behind the screen, a plastic see-through disc that would shine light through the plastic disc that would have a road on it, and then they'd have a little electronic cars moving around, and it would all project beautifully on the screen, and that sort of made, when I saw that, I was like, wow, that's kind of like what I played with Demon Driver really early on. And they remind me of the Ella Mechas, because with this one, you have like Pepper's Ghost effect, where it would actually project the light onto a coloured background, and they would have to do all these really clever things to try and replicate these really obscure machines.
Yeah, it's genius. It's like mechanics coming into gaming in a way that, software-based
Oh yeah.
just will never be.
And I remember, even though I didn't really play on these machines, I would put them on my shelf on my windowsill. And so when people would still come around and play on the Amstrads or my Mega Drive and Master System, they would go to them. They didn't have batteries in, but they would, oh wow, what's this? Even though, you can perfect the gameplay in an afternoon at most, and then just loop that for the rest of the time, they were still cool to own. Yeah.
And it's those associations that you never forget. I tend to, Jason, when I look at these, I remember them being in like the Freeman's catalogue.
Yeah.
And how much it is per week to own it rather than how much it costs to buy it. What's your first memory?
Of the Freeman's catalogue?
Yes.
The lingerie
I think you know the page we're talking about.
Did I just say what I was thinking? No, I think you're right. I think, again, it comes down to rarity again. I'm just trying to place it in a very important context so that everyone in the room really recognises why these are important. I mean, the very fact that they are objects and that you'll see them in the back of YouTubers' streaming setups, you know, whereas there are some amazing games on my iPhone, right? It blows my mind. I can be on a train and I can play that, or on my Steam Deck. You know, I'm playing blooming like Cyberpunk 2077 on my Steam Deck, and it's insane. Like it's, you know, and yet but I can't put it on a shelf, can I? No. I can't have this. I mean, have you seen what Chris has put together in the other room? It's an incredible display.
It's the largest collection of tabletop machines ever put together for a convention that we've got in there. So if you haven't been through and had a look, I just made that up, but there's a chance that's correct. But do have a look. How many machines have you brought, Chris?
Just like 60 there today.
You got 60.
60 machines.
I didn't even know that 60 were made. So just to conclude, so I'm saying that the physicality of them is something really unique and special, and I would imagine, well, it is being emulated now in the way that everything comes back. It's the only good thing about getting old is that you do get this sense of wisdom, don't you? And it's kind of funny because youngsters think that this is the first time they've seen anything, and you've seen it, it's its third iteration. And Numskull and other companies are doing something similar with the quarter arcades, you know?
Yeah, I was going to straight to your point. The thing I was going to say about these things is they obviously get the cabs emulator multi-game. They're a dedicated machine.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the thing for me personally, that, you know, you are just playing Zaxxon, or maybe a better example is you haven't got Miss PacMan and PacMan on the same machine, they're separate machines. Yeah. And I think that, for me, that's why it's like the arcade, for me, because, you know, obviously in the arcade originally you didn't have, you know, well, you had multi-choice and things like that later, but you had that one game, and that's all you're doing. You've got your head down playing that specific thing. And that's the wonderment, I think, for it all, really.
Plus, these machines and people like you collecting them is single-handedly keeping D-sized batteries going. What were the ones that were even bigger? Were they D?
C.
So C.
Which one was bigger, C or D?
They're like really stupid. Oh, C, D, double D. Is it double D?
No, I don't think Double D was. That was another area of the catalogue.
So, I'll just complete that thought then with Peter. What was your first tabletop that you had, whether it was later in life or when you were a kid?
So I had the Corvette racing desktop, which was a rip-off of the Toby one, but my cousin had the Outrun LCD game, which was it's basically the Tiger handheld, but put in a massive plastic case. So you had a little steering wheel, and you could play the Tiger game. You had a little gear stick, and it was all very nice. But it was just a massive hunk of plastic, which didn't need all of that. But it just felt like the Outrun experience. Octavius recently bought me a Batman version of it, which I didn't realise existed, which is basically the same game, but they put the Batcar in it. But the bit of plastic on the front is huge. It's like a mile long. It's like, they must have used most of the plastic in the 80s to make this thing. And it just shows that, you know, if you made that today, people would be outraged at the misuse of plastic and like the waste of time. But at the time, it was like, this is great. This is like a huge hunk of plastic that I could just get engaged with. And it was good fun.
Right, you've been patiently sitting listening to this conversation, but now it's time for you to get involved. Didn't give you enough warning there. Now it's time for you to get involved. Cheers. As we play Tabletop Tipping Point. Right, so these, as you can see in front of us, you what? I got mics before.
We've done it.
I've ticked him off. It's all ticked off. I'm not playing games. Right, these are a selection of Chris from Games You Love's most beloved machines. We test the panel and the audience, recognising through sight and sound these retro LED lovelies. And for every incorrect answer, as its tipping point, I'll push one of these off the table. So you can see what's at stake. I mean, them batteries are going to fall out, aren't they? Right, so this is what's going to... He's thinking, is he kidding? Right, I'm going to play you the sound of a game, and then first one, I'm going to let one of you chuck your hand in the air if you know what it is. Okay, are the rules clear? Oh, yes. You're on board, lovely. Okay, have a listen. Have a listen. Have a... No. Have a listen. I don't know, am I? Oh. Oops. Fucking give that away, hasn't it? Right, I'll give you that one then.
What could it be?
That was Alien Attack, I'll show you again. There we go, look. Right, so that was... It's alright, this will get better as it goes along. Right, have a listen to this one. Right, what is it? What?
Astro Wars. Who said Astro Wars first?
All of those people said it first.
I think it was you. Stand up, take your round of applause. Stand up, stand up. Right, let's have a look at that then. Here it comes, hopefully. There it is. And that's you. Is that your machine? Okay, so that's Astro Wars. Right, we've got another one for you. So this is for the audience again, and the next one is going to come. Is going to go over to the panel. So what's this one? This is a bit more tricky. Remember, I'm going to push one off if you don't get it.
This one is really hard, actually.
No? Okay, Chris, which one can I push off the table?
Push your pen off.
Oh no, I need the pen for the extensive notes. Right, have a look. This was, well, you tell them, Chris.
Was that basketball?
Yeah, have a look.
Oh, yeah.
Can't believe you didn't get that. If you'd gone to bed earlier last night, you'd have got that. There we go. Right, this one's going over to the panel, so nobody look at me laptop. Stop looking. Right, okay, this is for the panel. Stop looking.
Can't help it.
This is for the panel. Come on. Stop it! Well done, nostalgia nerd. That was indeed Donkey Kong! And we'll do one more for the audience. Which one have they got a chance? Oh, you might have got this one. Oh, shit. I thought, oh, a quiz will be a good idea. Right, we're doing okay, I'll give you another one. This is for the audience now. Don't piss me about. Come on, here we go.
Another hard one. It's a really hard one.
No?
Should we give a clue?
Yeah, you give a clue because you can see it.
Alright. Animals, am I right?
Animals?
Safari.
Who said safari? Wrong! No, well done, it's safari, take a look!
It's the Bambino one. The Bambinos were not in Argos.
Anyone here from the panel know safari? Can just tell us your thoughts on safari?
Also, that was the worst clue ever, so well done for getting that.
Are there no animals in safari?
Yeah, but I mean...
Oh, that's an advert, ignore that. Come on to that later. Right, I think you'll agree that was an enjoyable and well-planned segment. Cheers. Thank you. Stop it, really, stop it. Okay, right, here's a good question. I'm going to go right through the panel. I'm going to start with Mike, because Dan thinks he's been left out, so I'm going to start with Mike over here. What retro arcade games would you like to have seen converted to tabletop?
Like one of these? Can it be
That
from
never-
anywhere in history?
So any retro game
Okay,
that never got
I'd
on...
like to see a VFD Time Crisis. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, how you make that work, I don't know.
Science.
It would be amazing. Yeah, science would win.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
Peter?
Wasn't there a Tiger handheld version of Time Crisis?
Was there?
With like a little gun, and it had like 4 sensors.
I mean, they did MC Hammer on Tiger LCD. I'm sure they got round to Time Crisis before that.
I think they did, yeah. And it's like you had 4 hitboxes, and they were mapped a quarter of a screen each. So you can play that. It will disappoint you, but yeah.
What about you, Peter? Any thoughts?
What in this format?
Yeah, it's just some of the, so you know, your favourites off your Amiga or your...
I mean, I'd quite like to see elevator action, because that would have been perfect to convert to these.
That would really work, wouldn't it?
Numskull are doing one, aren't you? Doing like a quarter-size one, which is elevator action. Yeah, which is the next best thing. But in this format, it just would have worked really well.
Same question to Jason. I mean, I'll expand it as well. You could even think of like a newer game if you want. Could you do that cyber game you play?
Cyberpunk. Oh yeah, that would be. No, you probably couldn't. So I tell you what, I'm going to give you 2. In that, I'm going to give you one that I think would really work, and then so Cyberpunk I think is great. I think that's a lovely suggestion. Thank you. I think that would be a challenge, but it would be an interesting challenge, and I wouldn't say that it's impossible, because these prove the point, don't they? That you can actually, with a bit sort of folding your brain sideways, you can come up with solutions. But I think a game that would have worked really well on this format is Spy Hunter. I think that would work really, really good. And you could have remember you've got the lorry, and it comes and you drive up into the lorry, and that could be sort of waiting, couldn't it, in the centre of the screen, and he lights up every few rounds or so, with the Peter Gunn theme in that sort of chirpy, cheap music would be great.
Are you going to say something Sonic related? I'm guessing.
No. I mean, there are Sonic Tiger LCD games. They're terrible. But I tell you what, like someone more recently, I did a video on Castlevania ROM hacks and whatever, and someone made a Tiger LCD type Castlevania game. Like they basically ported Symphony of the Night into an LCD. But no, probably something like Geometry Wars. I think that would be pretty cool. Yeah, that's a newer one.
Chris?
Well, I'm a driving sort of enthusiast, so I've got 2. I think a 8-player Daytona that you can sort of lock together, 8, that you can sort of lock in, and then I think just like a Ridge Racer would be good. You could do that, but maybe like electromechanical, but really somehow weirdly basic, like if it was made in 1978. Yeah, I've seen that happen.
Mike, you're in the midst of working on a book about, and I'll put a video on later about it as you're filing out, but you're working on a book about the history of these machines. Why is it a story that needs telling, in your opinion?
I think when you look back at the 80s and when you were buying games and you look on the back of a C64 game, you see all these different screenshots, and they were the SD version or the Amiga, right? There was that chase for arcade perfection. There was like, everything has to be like the arcade, right? I remember like playing Robocop in the arcade, then playing on the Spectrum and going, that ain't, it's close enough, it's not, we talked about it earlier. But I think what these kind of games offer is that arcade imperfection and that kind of standalone factor that makes them unique but part of a wider ecosystem and part of a wider history. So when you look at Zaxxon, you talked about Outrun there, like various like official licensed stuff like the Coleco things. These are games that were made to complement the arcade. Like there's wonderful old adverts of like, for the Coleco stuff, of like someone playing arcade games who won't go home to see his wife, and his wife like gets him like, here's the one at home, blah, 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 blah. But they know it's not the same game, but they are, as they say, through smart solutions, they are something a bit different that sits outside of it that complements everything. So when you talk about game, I've written several books and various other pieces on gaming history. These are a core part of that quite often gets left to the side, but actually they're absolutely part and parcel and foundational. Like when it comes to like, we don't get dedicated handhelds so much or dedicated, tabletops like this, but we do have things like, the Astro City, maybe the Taito, Egret and stuff like that that are coming through. And they kind of come from a place of people growing up with stuff like this, and now they've gone, okay, well we can do more than that. The core arcades are another case in point. Like, how do you take, that Coleco PacMan or something and bring it up to date? Well, it's that way, but it starts from these. So yeah, I think it's a really crucial part of gaming history that we're all talking about it, so there's a lot of familiarity with these things, but no one until Numskull come along and done it has actually put it into a collection, if you will. And, I wish it was, it's a book. It's not like every single one, but it's going to be like an amazing snapshot of what these were, yeah.
I mean, the other problem is that the more you talk about them, the more the price is going to go up on these.
Well, I mean, very few of these exist of each one. I mean, you're going to be throwing these in. How many of these got thrown in the bin back in the day?
Well, this is what I was going to say. When you said about going to like car boots and stuff, where you would find these for like £2 or £3.
Those days are
long. I mean, you know, God, there's probably £1,000 worth of stuff on this table, so please don't tick them off.
See, I went to a pinball room with a few like non-gaming friends of mine, and they were explaining. They were asking me like, what sort of people are going to be at this place? I went, well, it's actually quite different. The retro scene. They play pinball, but they're not part of the pinball community, and the pinball community don't tend to be in this, and this is even more niche than that. But like you say, it's important. Yeah.
One of the things that you do on your YouTube channel that's great, Dan, is that you find these kind of oddities, more obscure things, facts and games. What would you say out of the tabletops that you're aware of are the kind of weirdest, strangest?
So I might be sneaking away from tabletop, but it's kind of in that era.
I'll allow that, Dan.
I've got the Sega. I'm forgetting what the name of it was. I bought it, and then Retro Man Cave did a video on it, and it was featured by YouTube.
Oh, I'm well aware of that happening.
I can't remember, and then I was like, damn it. But the person that sold it to me sold it stupid cheap. So yeah. What was it? It was basically like you put your telly on and then you play a VHS.
You mean like the Sega video driver?
Video driver, that's what it was called. So for people who don't remember that, there was basically a little car that you would put underneath your tiny little square telly, and it would go along a motor, and you would control the motor via a little steering wheel. And when you play the VHS tape, at the bottom of the VHS tape, it would have a little white line that was at the bottom, and that's the sensor that the little thing was picking up. That's what you had to try and keep in contact with. So it was like almost like a bridge between this and video games. Literally video games. Yeah.
It was like a driving version of the Action Max, wasn't it? Basically.
Yeah.
But it was just the same video over and over. I think they tried to release 3 VHS tapes.
Yeah.
But only 1 came out, so you just had to.
I think America might have got more.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So you had the same 10 minutes of footage.
Yeah.
Just playing that over.
And it was just so bad. It was literally someone who put a camera in the front of their car and driven.
Yeah.
So even though you have to kind of steer, it doesn't really make sense, because sometimes it's just a car just taking over the lanes in front of you. It makes no sense. But as a kid, you're like, wow, all you're doing is just watching your little car do this at the front.
That's the thing. It's like a tiny plastic car, and on the screen you've got these massive Corvettes. It's like, what kind of world am I living in?
I've just put this up because Chris, you know the book that's coming out, presumably you've had to take all these pictures. So these aren't, you know...
So this is why we needed the machine.
You must have had to buy quite a lot of machines.
I mean, you know, we could go on Google Images and swipe them, which you probably do, but we just want to feature our collection. It's kind of a mix of collection. A bit of Mike, a bit of me, a bit of Matt, for some reason, my boss. And that's the point, you know, these are our personal kind of items, you know, kind of like our own thing. We're not just like suddenly gone along and, you know, sort of decided we're going to, you know, just do this. This is something we've held on to ourselves. We bought them as important for the book and added to the collection because, you know, we wanted to have substantialness, and that's where we've ended up. So the stuff we've got in there at the moment, the Kickstarter, is the kind of base, and then, you know, depending on the success of the campaign, we'd love to, you know, add to it really.
Which of the machines, in terms of how much they cost at the moment, is the kind of Sam Coupe of tabletop machines? What's silly money at the moment?
Well, often, yeah, so these guys teach them stuff. Yeah, it's the box. There's ones where they're boxed that much more. So there's one on the stand, which is Pengu, and that's a fairly pricey item. Got a security guard managing that one. But Saxon's a pretty hefty beast as well. It's quite hard to get in that condition. And again, it's that point condition box that's going to, you know, add that value really in terms of them. So yeah, they hold their value. They're a good investment. Some of them are hard to get hold of, and obviously get them in working order as well. I mean, you have to give them a bit of a bang in the shade sometimes to get them working. Yeah, overall, you know, if you look after them. I was chatting to one of the guys earlier. You can replace, obviously, with, you know, elements, get them working again. I think some people, a bit like arcade machines, like fixing them, getting them back up to speed. There's also a guy, I can't remember the actual YouTube, where he's put like an outrun in a Tomitronic, which is just unbelievable. So he put the, I guess, a main version of Outrun in the Tony dashboard. So there's some mods and that going. I'd like to see a bit more mods actually. It could be quite interesting. But you know, maybe
That's the problem,
when
innit?
they busted, yeah. When
They're going to start getting gutted and Raspberry Pis will go in them like everyone did with their Spectrums in
maybe ones that were in the
2000.
skip but completely wrecked, you know.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
I remember Touch Me.
Hello?
I'm not asking you to do something. No, there was Touch Me went for a lot of money eventually, and that was Atari. That was an Atari arcade game where it was just four big buttons, and it was essentially Simon. And eventually they brought that out as a small handheld, and then it got ripped off. Well, yeah, I suppose ripped off, and Simon came out, which was a much bigger and bulkier, but everyone remembers Simon and forgets Touch Me. And then when they started doing newer versions of Touch Me, everyone's like, oh look, Atari are copying Simon. It went the other way around. So
The timing of things was a bit wild around then. There was a lot of people ripping each other up and stuff. Just to touch what you mentioned of photography, what was really crucial with the book as well, in terms of actually getting hands-on with these things, was like the process of playing them, if that makes sense. Like how much the buttons give, what squeaks, you know, the feel of them was really important. So hopefully it's not just a book of specs. And the photographs are lovely, but hopefully it's not just the people don't read it and just go like, oh yeah, it takes X amount of batteries, it has so many levels.
Yeah.
Like, we did really try to get that you know, that nostalgia of actually touching them and playing them, because like that's what you remember, right? The feedback of a joystick, how far that joystick travels and stuff. So that was why it was crucial to actually have them.
If you want to find out more about the book, you've got a stand in the Traders Hall where people can come along, and we're handing out some things on the way out. But before we finish, we are going to do some questions from you guys, okay? And then we'll let you get on, because I know that some of your blood alcohol levels have dropped dangerous levels.
I'm looking at you, Notebook. Right, who's got a question?
Come down here, because my reception's a bit weak. Yeah, in more ways than one. Right, come here. You can ask anything. It can be anything.
Impress me.
Let me ask you one question. I'm collecting these things as well, and I discovered that the Grandstand Scramble doesn't actually play this proper Scramble game. So, do you anything?
It's a different one, yeah.
Yeah.
So Scramble that then was like, I always think it was called like Astro Wars. Some, you know, they changed the name as Rambler as well, like from the Konami Scramble, right? Yeah. So yeah, that Scramble that's then Grandstand branded is not the same game, but it has the same name, yeah. So that's a funny. There's a few entries in the book with the same name, but they're different games. Again, it was just like, licensing wasn't as tight back then as it is nowadays. So yeah, there's a lot of name trading going on.
I think there's an interesting point to make actually, and that's that in preparation for this panel, I wanted to refresh my memory a little bit, and so I did a bit of a deep dive on the old YouTube, and there's surprisingly little about this subgenre of gaming, and I think that's why the book is really important, because there will be some of your Dan's deep dive stories. There'll be some mafia money hidden away somewhere, or there'll be some hidden code or some Easter egg or something. But I don't know what they are, because that information is lost to history at the moment until Mike and the team and with the...
Dan does his complete history.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I think for that reason, I'm really fascinated to see this project come to fruition.
Yeah, dead right. Another question, it can be about anything. Oh, come on.
At the back.
At the back. I don't know why I'm walking over, because the mic don't stretch. I don't even want coming over.
Just shout it out.
Yeah, shout it out. Everybody can hear us, can't you?
Yeah.
Hi, so as someone who's 29, I've not really been able to have experience of these as a child. My main experiences with these tabletop games is with conventions such as this. And I found that as someone my age who has the ability, as was being stated about like being able to have everything in one device, I find that I have a lot of paralysis of choice, and so I find a really good connection with these things as someone who's younger who hasn't had experience with these and being immediately drawn to them. And I was wondering if you think that maybe we should return to more dedicated devices when it comes to more modern things.
100% we should, but we're not going to. I mean, I've got a son that basically I get most Nintendo Switch games that comes out, and he'll give each one 5 minutes time because it's too hard. I want to play something else. Like going back to the day when you had 3 or 4 games a year, new games a year, and that would open your games at most that you would get. Like you put the time in, big time. I wish it's just like music, having everything at your fingertips. The amount of amazing new albums that I listen to, and then about 2 months later, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that album.
Yeah. I think you make a good point. I think it's a massive problem. But I can't help but be optimistic about the human spirit. My day job, you might be surprised to know this, is that I talk about artificial intelligence and exponential growth to companies. That's how I actually, pay the mortgage, as it were. And everything else I do for love, right? And I love doing that, by the way. I think it's really interesting. But what I mean is it's work as opposed to everything else, which is play. And in that context, I talk a lot about rarity and about things. I'll give you an example, right? This is why the only point I take issue with is that we won't return to that, or that it won't become a commercial proposition, like for a startup. I mean, startups often push rarity as part of the culture of a particular product. I'll give you an example of what I mean, right? In the 70s and 80s, I remember when coffee was subject to the automation that every foodstuff was subject to, like the soda stream and the kind of the tea machine that you used to have next to your bed. Mum and Dad used to have next to their bed. The trolley, what was those trolleys called? The tea trolley, not the tea trolley.
Tea's made.
Yeah. What I mean is when you had a meal in the 70s or 80s,
kept them hot. Like
kept all the meal. Yeah, hostess trolley. Thank you very much. And then when you went to hotels, it was like, wow, look, that machine can make coffee. The point is the coffee was not very, very good, but it was all about automation, do you get me? And now, you can't go to a town in Britain, or village in Britain, and not find a place where you go, you stand in line for 10 minutes, someone generally with a tattoo and a beard, or lots of piercings, takes ages to make an artisan version of what you could get from an SO machine, petrol station machine in 30 seconds. You pay £3.50, and you wait ages to get it. You see what I'm trying to say? There is an experience in buying. I'm talking about buying coffee. There's an experience in that because there is an inbuilt rarity, and it makes the experience better. And I would argue that if you did the taste test with the SO automated coffee machine, like the Costa ones, which are made down the road in Stoke, by the way, if you know that. The coffee is very, very good. Very, very good from those machines. And if you put it in a blind test, I think most of us would be hard-pressed to tell the difference between the one that a barista made for 15 minutes that we assume is so much better than the one from the machine. And all I'm saying is that Costa have seen...
So you like coffee then?
They've seen the value of rarity. They've seen the value of rarity, and I wonder if something like that may be recognised in the future with these sorts of designs.
The unique experience of the... Absolutely.
Just to bring it back to tabletop games. I think that mindsets have changed as well. Like, if you remember back to your youth, there's a lot of rose-tinted, glasses situations going on. I was bored for a lot of my youth. Like, having one of these for a year, I would play it for a bit and then just sit in my dark room and do nothing. So I think if I gave one of these to my kids now, they'd be like, what the hell is this? They would have they played it for like 5 minutes. And then
but that's because of the technology's changed.
Yeah, but also...
I'm not trying to suck up to quarter arcades, but my kid is a really good PacMan player because of quarter arcades.
Yeah.
And because it's like the perfect way. It plays exactly how it should.
Yeah. But that mindset has changed, because there's so much choice. My kids don't have the same decision paralysis that I have when I approach a game, because I'm just used to these and having one machine. They'll go into Steam, have 600 games, just be like, I'm going to play that, I'm going to play that. And that mindset has completely changed for kids now. And they'll get a phone and they'll just play loads of games. But for us, I think because that is not a kind of embedded thought process we've had from youth, we get overwhelmed with it. And I think that's the difference between what we have and what younger kids have now. I think the mindset is completely different. So.
I suppose as well, there's a different, you can view it in two ways. You can either view it as a downgraded version of some software or a game, or a unique experience that's practical and mechanical in the same way pinball is.
Yeah.
And it's which one of those which lane you get into. I like coffee as well.
Right, no question. Yes, quick.
stand in the talk.
I'll move you away from the speaker as well. Just from there. No, just there.
So I'm just trying to place this in my history of gaming. Being born in 1970, so not too far away from yourself. I seem to recall getting these style of displays in handheld versions, probably around the late 70s, before we started getting like grandstand and Pong, at home to plug into the TV. So I think my memory, if it's right, was this was kind of cutting edge back then. This was the closest you could get, to the arcade experience. Is that how you folks remember?
I mean, yeah, there were LCD. If you think about Game & Watch and stuff, those were all LCD. Basically using calculator kind of screen technology, right? So the vacuum fluorescent screens did feel radical. I mean, it's probably no surprise that so many of them are sort of, designed to be space-age sci-fi things, right? I mean, they look and they pop and they, just off the back of what you were seeing in Star Wars and stuff like that. I mean, they do have that sort of futuristic vibe, even though it's only showing like 3 colours at any time, really, just the way that the displays worked. But yeah, I mean, the way that the kind of like those pocket kind of LCD games were coming through, Game & Watch being like the key part of that, was certainly, what was Game & Watch, 80? 80? Yeah. So yeah, these were definitely, felt like that upper level, I suppose, that kind of the premium side of it. I don't know if there's any VFD handhelds specifically, just because of the sort of, these use big batteries for a reason, and you couldn't really put them in a pocket-sized device. Yeah.
Well, I remember getting something for Christmas, I think, before I got any home kind of arcade machines or things like that. There was a kind of handheld jet fighter game where you had a jet on the left and enemy jets flying the other way. There was 5 bullets in each other, and I thought this was just about the best thing you could possibly have. Pretty much like you guys were talking about, and that was cutting edge. Like I remember waking up early, I think maybe on a Christmas morning, and opening this thing up early and playing it until my parents woke up, on this handheld thing. So yeah, I can't remember what it was called, sadly. So kind of following this, I'm going to have to kind of research.
But what you're touching on there as well is like, it's not just kind of what the game was, but where you were in your life, like in that kind of like, not just your gaming journey, but just like, it was Christmas, whatever year it was. And again, that's why having these things in hand is so important. Like watching it, I mean, all right, there isn't a great deal of stuff on these on YouTube or anything, but I mean, they don't carry through on YouTube very well anyway. Like, I mean, you could do a nice little, I mean, you've done a really nice big thing with, I can't remember what channel it was, you did something with a whole range of them in a while.
Yeah, did a TikTok and got like 250,000 views.
Yeah. But like, it is part of connecting it back to a childhood, a moment in time. So, yeah.
I think the other thing is the alternative required a CRT TV, right? And we're so used to these, aren't we? And so this, to take your point, the previous chat, that having a screen that small wasn't normal, was it? It felt really advanced.
If you think, I think about the Microvision and stuff like that MV console, and like, the display on that was garbage. I mean, if you can find one that works today, congratulations, they're just not built to last. These things, like, they get battered around. Those displays, they hold up. They genuinely, like, they do last, unless you chucked them down the stairs as a kid, or got into fights with your brother and yanked the joystick off, or whatever,
Or push them off the table.
Or push them off the table. Well, if you have brothers like mine, that's what happened to a few of them, but...
Depends if they've got those batteries in.
Yeah, of course they do.
I think expectations were lower back then as well, so these things seemed like better. I mean, do you remember like Ring Raiders? It was literally a plane on your finger, and like you play with that for hours. Well, I mean, an hour maybe. I mean, like the R-Zone came out, the kind of virtual reality eye thing. You played one of them, and that was like Panda's virtual reality for the home. Yeah, and it was migraine inducing, and you couldn't play it.
But I feel like that was where the decline happened. Like, if you look back at classic arcade games like your Space Invaders and your PacMans, they're very simple. They're stupidly simple, but they're stupidly addictive, and they're easier to replicate because they are just move things around into perfect little blocks. When you start moving into like the R-Zone, and there was a fighting game, Bosch in Tekken,
and
Daytona was on there. It's just like, So Daytona at the back of the car is so fat, when you're looking in that little thing, it's like half the screen is the logo of Daytona and you've just got to try and work around it. But yeah, like, that's when it started going downhill and they started getting a bad reputation. You look at like the majority of Tiger LCD games, they were bad. But you go back in time and you look at what the Game & Watch were doing, which is technically the same thing, but just on a dual screen most of the time, and they were incredible. Like Donkey Kong on a Game & Watch was arguably just as good as going to the arcade. It felt brilliant.
Whoa, sorry.
No, I mean, back in the day, it was good. It done everything it needed to do.
As good as the arcade, is that what
As a
you're
kid,
saying?
yeah. No, it was still like a perfectly playable game, and it's still, you can still pick it up today and play
Perfectly
it.
playable game I will take. As good as the arcade, I will not accept.
Should we arm wrestle over it? I'll take one more. I'll take one more question. Or not? Well, though, come down. Make it something that'll make...
No Donkey Kong is better than Donkey Kong 94, is it, anyway? So.
Stop, just leave it. It's not worth it.
Have a Donkey Kong challenge to decide.
Stop. Don't egg them on.
So a lot of these games are based on like arcade games and the pre-existing games, whether it's like a sort of port or like kind of a clone. But are there any of them that you think are as good as, or if not better than the originals?
I'm sorry, but I have hardcore nostalgia for playing Donkey Kong and realising it's still a great game. You go back and play most Tiger LCD games and you remember them being terrible even then.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Well, that's for nostalgia, isn't it? That's for nostalgia talk.
I probably played Donkey Kong on the Game & Watch years before I played it in the arcade, in all fairness.
Have you played like Super Mario 3 on the actual Watch version?
I
played that for hours on end.
Right.
If you can't compare that to the game itself, can you? They are very different things.
I would just to answer our the question. I think was Astro Wars based on Galaxian?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because it was super Galaxian.
I think Astro Wars at the back. Who just asked the question? Hello. Yeah, I think Astro Wars is really playable. And I don't know if you guys want to slag me off for that.
No, I was going to say, like, we got Astro Wars here, we got Star Force as well, which is like kind of like a sequel, I guess, or like a spiritual sequel. They play really well. You can tell that Galaxian gameplay, which is, a twist on Space Invaders anyway, right? It works really well. So yeah, like they were, bringing a bit of originality in it with the Astro Wars with like the docking sections. It's not arcade, right? It's arcade imperfect. I said it earlier on, right? Yeah. It is the arcade through a slightly wrong, wonky lens. But yeah, I think there's plenty of these games that you can have fun with and go, oh right. It's not like it feels compromised because it's something different. So it can't be a compromisation of what it is,
Yeah, Astro Wars has got like, is it 5 sprite lines across? And it's the same with Tron, because that's like more of a vertical one, and you don't have many pointing up, but that is an incredible way to play Tron on these.
I mean, the way that Tron is even on one of these is amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, and it's the perfect machine for it.
Yeah.
Right then, folks, to find out more about the book that's been mentioned, From Coin-Ops to Tabletops, there is a Kickstarter that is live at the moment. I think I put a QR code up, but also you can go to the Traders Hall and see some of these amazing machines for yourself. Go see Chris and the team. Coming up at 2 p.m, we've got gaming legend Doom Guy himself at 2 p.m. John Romero will be here for a one-on-one interview. I'm really looking forward to that at 2 o'clock. Have a fantastic weekend with us at Play Expo. Don't drink too much watered down lager. But for now, please thank Jason Bradbury.